The sleepy neighborhood seemed picture-perfect, but underneath the facade, a storm was brewing. When Jenny placed a friendly little free library on her lawn, she never imagined it would become ground zero for an explosive clash between her homeowners association and the city. With her family's home on the line, she had to fight for her right to share books, even if it meant going to war with the powers that be. Jenny gazed fondly at the cheerful wooden box on her front lawn, its shelves brimming with an eclectic mix of books, from dog-eared paperbacks to children's classics. This little free library had become a point of pride for the tight-knit community, a place where neighbors could share their love of reading. But as Jenny unlocked the door and tidied up the returned volumes, she had no idea the simple gesture was about to tear her world apart. The next morning, an urgent knock on the door jolted Jenny from her breakfast. She opened it to find Mrs. Wilkins, the HOA president, glaring at her with undisguised fury. "Jenny, I'm here to inform you that your contraption is in direct violation of our neighborhood covenants," the older woman spat. "You have 48 hours to remove it, or will be forced to issue a fine." Jenny's jaw dropped. But the little free library is a beloved community project. People love being able to share books like this. Mrs. Wilkins sniffed disdainfully. "Well, the HOA has decided it's an eyesore. It doesn't fit the aesthetic we're going for." She thrust a thick stack of papers into Jenny's hands. "Here are the guidelines. I suggest you comply or face the consequences." As the HOA president stormed off, Jenny felt a sinking sensation in the pit of her stomach. This was her family's dream home. She couldn't risk losing it over a book-sharing box. Trembling, she sat down at the kitchen table, staring at the imposing documents. There had to be a way to resolve this peacefully. Determined, Jenny grabbed her laptop and started furiously researching. To her surprise, she discovered that little free libraries were recognized as vital community resources in many cities, with local governments often supporting and even sponsoring them. Surely her HOA couldn't override that, could they? With renewed hope, Jenny marched to City Hall, prepared to plead her case. But the moment she explained the situation, the city official's eyes widened in alarm. "Your HOA is threatening to fine you for a little free library. That's outrageous. These book-sharing stations are considered essential public services in our city." He shook his head in disbelief. "Don't worry, ma'am. We'll have a word with your homeowners association. You keep that library right where it is." As Jenny walked back home, a triumphant smile spread across her face. The little free library wasn't going anywhere, not if the city had anything to say about it. Her community was about to get a whole lot more interesting. The next morning, Jenny awoke to a flurry of frantic knocks on her door. Pulling it open, she found Mrs. Wilkins standing there, her face a mask of fury. "What have you done, Jenny?" the HOA president seethed. "I just received a strongly worded letter from the city informing me that your little book box is an essential community service that we're not allowed to remove." Jenny couldn't help the smug grin that spread across her face. "Well, Mrs. Wilkins, it seems the city disagrees with your assessment. They've made it very clear that the little free library is protected and that any attempt to fine or remove it will be met with serious consequences." The older woman's eyes narrowed to slits. "This isn't over, young lady. The HOA has its ways of making life difficult for troublemakers." With that, she spun on her heel and stomped away, muttering under her breath. Jenny closed the door, her heart pounding. She knew Mrs. Wilkins was not one to back down easily. The battle lines had been drawn, and her little book-sharing box had become ground zero for a war between the HOA and the city. Later that day, as Jenny restocked the shelves of the little free library, she noticed a crowd of her neighbors gathering, curious expressions on their faces. Word had clearly spread of the HOA's attempt to remove the beloved landmark. "Jenny, is it true what they're saying?" asked her friend, Sarah, a concerned look on her face. "The HOA wants to get rid of the library, It's true, Sarah, Jenny replied, trying to keep her voice steady. But the city has stepped in and declared it an essential community resource. We're not going to let the HOA take it down without a fight. A cheer went up from the gathered crowd, and Jenny felt a swell of pride. Her little book-sharing box had become a symbol of defiance against the overbearing HOA, and her neighbors were rallying behind her. As the sun began to set, Jenny glanced back at the library, its vibrant colors glowing in the fading light. She knew the battle was far from over, but she was determined to protect this cherished piece of her community. Little did she know, Mrs. Wilkins was already plotting her next move, her eyes narrowed in a calculating gaze. The war for the little free library was just beginning. The next few days passed in a tense standoff, with Jenny and her neighbors vigilantly watching over the little free library, ready to spring into action at the first sign of trouble. Mrs. Wilkins, however, seemed to have retreated, leaving them to wonder what she was planning. One morning, as Jenny was straightening the books on the shelves, a sleek black car pulled up in front of her house. The tinted window rolled down, revealing the stern face of a middle-aged man in a crisp suit. "Ma'am, I'm Councilman Donovan from the city," he said, his voice clipped and authoritative. "I've been sent here to inform you that your little free library is in violation of several local ordinances." Jenny's heart sank. But the city just told me it was an essential community resource. How can it be in violation? The councilman's expression remained impassive. "There are regulations regarding the placement and size of such structures. I'm afraid you'll need to remove it or face hefty fines." Before Jenny could respond, a familiar voice rang out from behind her. "I knew you'd try something like this, Donovan." Turning, she saw Mrs. Wilkins striding across the lawn, a triumphant grin on her face. "The HOA has been in touch with the city council, and we've managed to get those pesky little free library rules changed." Jenny's stomach twisted with dread. "You can't do this. The library is a beloved part of our community." "Oh, but we can, my dear," Mrs. Wilkins purred. "And we have. Effective immediately, your little book-sharing box is in violation of city code. You have 24 hours to remove it, or will be forced to take action." Councilman Donovan nodded curtly. "I'm sorry, but those are the rules. Good day, ma'am." As the car pulled away, Jenny felt tears of frustration welling in her eyes. She had thought the city was on her side, but it seemed the HOA had found a way to outmaneuver them. Her neighbors gathered around, expressions of shock and anger etched on their faces. "We can't let them do this," Sarah cried. "The library means so much to all of us." Jenny took a deep breath, her mind racing. There had to be a way to save the little free library, but time was running out. With determination burning in her chest, she knew she had to find a solution, and fast. As the afternoon sun beat down, Jenny paced back and forth in her living room, her mind whirling with possibilities. The little free library had to be saved, but the HOA and city council seemed determined to shut it down. Suddenly, an idea struck her. Rushing to her computer, she began frantically searching for information, her fingers flying across the keyboard. A glimmer of hope started to rise in her chest. "That's it," she exclaimed, jumping up from her chair. Grabbing her car keys, she hurried out the door, determined to put her plan into action. First, she drove to City Hall, where she met with the same official who had previously assured her the library was protected. "I'm afraid the situation has changed," the official said, his brow furrowed with concern. "The city council has passed new ordinances that make the little free library non-compliant. My hands are tied." Jenny refused to give up. "But surely there must be a way to work around this. The library is so important to our community." The official paused, considering her words. "Well, there is one possibility. If the library were to be reclassified as a public art installation, it would fall under different regulations and be exempt from these new rules." A glimmer of hope sparked in Jenny's eyes. Public art installation. That's brilliant. How do I make that happen? The official smiled. You'll need to get the city's Public Art Commission involved. They'll need to evaluate the library and approve it as an official installation. If they do, the HOA will have no grounds to remove it. With a grateful nod, Jenny hurried out of City Hall, her mind racing. She had to move quickly before the HOA could take any further action. Next, she drove to the home of her friend, Sarah, who happened to be the president of the local arts council. Sarah, I need your help, Jenny said, her words tumbling out in a rush. The HOA is trying to shut down the Little Free Library, but the city said if we can get it reclassified as a public art installation, we can save it. Sarah's eyes widened, and a determined expression spread across her face. Well then, what are we waiting for? Let's get to work. Together, the two women sprang into action, rallying the Arts Council and preparing a formal proposal to present to the city's Public Art Commission. Time was of the essence, and they knew they had to move quickly if they were going to outmaneuver the HOA. As the sun began to set, Jenny glanced out the window at the Little Free Library, its cheery facade a beacon of hope in the growing darkness. She knew the battle was far from over, but she was more determined than ever to protect this cherished piece of her community. The following morning, Jenny and Sarah stood nervously before the Public Art Commission, their presentation prepared and their hopes high. Mrs. Wilkins and the rest of the HOA board sat in the audience, their faces twisted with barely concealed disdain. Thank you all for being here today, Jenny began, her voice surprisingly steady. We're here to ask the Commission to consider reclassifying our neighborhood's Little Free Library as an official public art installation. She went on to describe the library's history, its importance to the community, and the HOA's attempts to have it removed. The Commission members listened intently, their expressions thoughtful. When Jenny finished, one of the commissioners, a severe-looking woman, spoke up. This is an interesting proposal, but how can we be sure this library is truly a work of art and not just a glorified book-sharing box? Jenny glanced at Sarah, who quickly stepped forward. If I may, Madam Chair, we've brought some samples of the artwork and craftsmanship that went into creating the Little Free Library. She gestured to a display they had set up, showcasing the intricate carvings and vibrant paint job. The commissioners leaned in, examining the details with keen eyes. Slowly, expressions of approval began to spread across their faces. I have to say, this is quite an impressive piece, the chair conceded. And you make a compelling case for its importance to the community. Mrs. Wilkins shot to her feet, her face flushed with anger. But Madam Chair, this is clearly a violation of our HOA covenants. Allowing such an eyesore to remain will set a terrible precedent. The chair fixed the HOA president with a stern gaze. Mrs. Wilkins, the City Council has already deemed this Little Free Library an essential public service. As a work of community art, it falls under our jurisdiction, not the HOA's. A collective gasp rose from the audience as Mrs. Wilkins sputtered in outrage. Jenny felt a surge of triumphant relief, her heart pounding with the realization that they had won. The Little Free Library was safe. As the meeting adjourned, Jenny rushed to embrace Sarah, tears of joy streaming down her face. We did it. The library is here to stay. Their victory, however, was short-lived. Across town, Mrs. Wilkins was already plotting her next move, her eyes narrowed with determination. The war over the Little Free Library was far from over. The following days passed in an uneasy calm, with Jenny and her neighbors keeping a watchful eye on the Little Free Library. They had won the battle with the Public Art Commission, but they knew Mrs. Wilkins and the HOA were not the type to go down without a fight. One afternoon, as Jenny was adding some new books to the shelves, she noticed a strange car slowly cruising down her street. Squinting, she recognized the driver. It was Councilman Donovan, the same man who had threatened to have the library removed. Dread pooled in the pit of her stomach as she watched him pull into her driveway and stride up to the front door. Before she could react, the doorbell rang, and she found herself face to face with the stern-faced official. Mrs. Myers, I'm afraid I have some unfortunate news, Donovan began, his voice grave. The city has been presented with new information regarding the Little Free Library that has forced us to reconsider our previous stance. Jenny's heart sank. What do you mean? The Public Art Commission approved it as an official installation. Donovan held up a hand. I'm aware of that, and under normal circumstances, that would be sufficient. However, the HOA has filed a lawsuit claiming the Commission's decision was made under false pretenses. False pretenses? Jenny echoed, her voice rising in disbelief. What could they possibly mean by that? Apparently, the HOA has obtained evidence that the artwork featured on the library was not originally created for this purpose. Donovan explained, his expression one of reluctant sympathy. They're alleging that you and your friends misled the Commission. Jenny felt the blood drain from her face. That's absurd. Everything we presented was completely truthful. Donovan sighed. I understand your frustration, Mrs. Myers, but the city has been ordered by the courts to reevaluate the status of the Little Free Library. Until this matter is resolved, I'm afraid we have no choice but to require its removal. No choice? Jenny cried, her voice cracking with emotion. You're just going to let the HOA bully us into taking it down? After everything we've been through. I'm sorry, but my hands are tied, Donovan said, his expression apologetic. You have 48 hours to remove the library, or the city will be forced to take action. With that, he turned and walked back to his car, leaving Jenny standing on her doorstep, stunned and devastated. She had thought they had won, but now it seemed the HOA had found a way to snatch victory from their grasp. Tears of frustration and anger welled in her eyes as she stared at the cheerful little library, its future once again hanging in the balance. She knew she had to act fast, but this time, the odds seemed stacked against her. The news of the HOA's lawsuit and the city's subsequent order to remove the Little Free Library spread like wildfire through the neighborhood. Jenny's friends and neighbors rallied around her, outraged at the blatant attempt to undermine their community's beloved landmark. This is an absolute travesty. Sarah cried, her hands balled into fists. We can't let them do this. Jenny nodded, her expression grim. I know, and we won't. But we need to act fast. The city has given us 48 hours to take down the library. The group huddled together, brainstorming ideas and strategies. They needed to find a way to not only save the library, but also expose the HOA's underhanded tactics. Wait, I've got it, exclaimed one of Jenny's neighbors, a retired lawyer named Mr. Hernandez. If the HOA is alleging that the artwork was misrepresented, we need to prove they're the ones acting in bad faith. He turned to Jenny, a glint of determination in his eyes. Do you still have the receipts and documentation from when you and Sarah created the library? Jenny nodded. Yes, of course. We kept meticulous records of everything. Excellent, Mr. Hernandez said, a satisfied smile spreading across his face. Then we'll use that to show the court that the HOA's claims are baseless. We'll file a countersuit and get a restraining order to keep the library in place until this is resolved. The group erupted in cheers, the weight of despair lifting from their shoulders. With renewed energy, they set to work, gathering the necessary paperwork and preparing their legal strategy. Meanwhile, across town, Mrs. Wilkins sat in her lavish living room, a smug expression on her face. She had anticipated the community's resistance and had been meticulous in her planning. This time, she was confident there would be no stopping her. As the 48-hour deadline loomed, Jenny and her neighbors marched into the courthouse, their documentation in hand. The judge listened intently, his brow furrowed, as they laid out their case. When the HOA's legal team tried to present their evidence, Mr. Hernandez swiftly countered, systematically dismantling their claims. The judge's expression hardened, and he called for a recess to consider his ruling. As Jenny and the others waited anxiously in the hallway, they could feel the tide turning in their favor. They had fought hard, and this time, They were determined to emerge victorious. The tension in the courtroom was palpable as the judge returned, his face unreadable. Jenny and her neighbors held their breath, hoping against hope that their hard work had paid off. Having reviewed the evidence presented by both parties, the judge began, his voice commanding the room's attention. I find that the claims made by the Homeowners Association are without merit. The Little Free Library in question is a legitimate work of community art, and the city's previous approval of its status stands. A collective sigh of relief rippled through the crowd as the judge continued. Furthermore, I am issuing a permanent injunction against the HOA, prohibiting any further attempts to have this installation removed. The Little Free Library may remain in its current location, undisturbed. Mrs. Wilkins shot to her feet, her face flushed with outrage. But, Your Honor, this is an outrage. The HOA has every right to enforce its own covenants and regulations. The judge fixed her with a stern gaze. Madam, your association has clearly overstepped its bounds in this case. The Little Free Library serves an important function in this community, and any attempts to remove it or punish its creators will be met with severe consequences. As the gavel came down, sealing the ruling, Jenny felt a surge of elation. They had won. After all the battles and setbacks, the Little Free Library was finally safe, protected by the law and the unwavering support of her neighbors. Outside the courthouse, Jenny was surrounded by a jubilant crowd, all eager to congratulate her and celebrate their hard-fought victory. Sarah wrapped her in a tight hug, tears of joy streaming down her face. I can't believe we did it, she exclaimed. This library means so much to all of us, and we weren't going to let the HOA take it away. Jenny nodded, a grateful smile spreading across her face. I know. And I'm so proud of our community for standing up and fighting for what's important. This Little Free Library isn't just a box of books. It's a symbol of our resilience and our commitment to each other. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the cheerful library, Jenny knew that this was more than just a win for her and her neighbors. It was a testament to the power of a community united, a reminder that when people come together, they can overcome even the most daunting challenges. The Little Free Library would remain, a beacon of hope and a celebration of the human spirit, a testament to the enduring strength of a neighborhood that refused to be silenced.